We will go ahead and get our program started. Again, for any new faces in the crowd, I'm Ray Comiskey, president here at the college, and we want to thank you for joining us today for our speaker series. I think you're really going to enjoy the program today. Linda Boevingloh joined the college just a couple of years ago as our director of nursing, and when you think of director of nursing, you tend to think of somebody who's spent her life in the hospitals or in the doctor's office, something like that. And Linda's done that, but she's also done about 1,000 other things, and so she's got a really interesting background. And today she's going to talk to us a little bit about a time in her life that was not only interesting, but it's a bit of a passion, as you'll see from some of the items she has on display here. Linda received her LPN in 1971 and an RN associate's degree in 1987 from Lincoln University, an RN bachelor's degree from Central Methodist, and an RN master's degree via Kaplan University Online. Her first job was as an LPN in ICU, apparently it's alphabet soup, at Deaconess Hospital in St. Louis when she was just 18 years old. For the next 14 years, she kicked around mostly at ICUs at St. John's Mercy Hospital, Doctors Hospital in Florida, and finally Phelps County Regional Medical Center in Rolla, where she worked in the emergency room. The love of the emergency nursing propelled her back to school to earn an RN, and is the area she considers to be her specialty. In the 90s, Linda began teaching full-time for a PN program for the Rolla Area Technical and Vocational School while continuing to work ERs on the weekend, venturing out to Missouri Baptist and Sullivan and St. Louis Children's Mercy Hospital. In 1999, she headed across the seas to the Middle East, and that's her story, almost. Linda's philosophy is that life should not, and that's capitalized N-O-T, be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving in an attractive and well-preserved body, but rather just get in sideways. Chardonnay in one hand, chocolate in the other, a body thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and screaming, woohoo, what a ride. So please welcome Linda and get ready for the ride as she takes us on her journey of what it was like living in the Middle East. Linda Boevingloh.
Thank you. Good lunch, wasn't it?
Yes.
Excellent. This is my story. I do not have a planned speech because I will tell you what I have found out is that with each different group of people, see, I don't even need this, do I? With each different group of people, it kind of takes on a different bend. People kind of want to learn a little bit of different about the Middle East, or they want to hear about how I got there. I was 47 years old and had never been outside of the U.S. when I got on the plane to go over to the Middle East. I had always wanted to travel. My son by then was away in college, and I was sitting in Rolla, Missouri, wondering what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Because when I was 20, believe it or not, I was thinking, well, I had my son when I was 26, and by the time he gets raised, well, I'll be ready to retire. I'll be 45 and old. You know how. Guess what? I got to be 45 and found out that I wasn't old and couldn't afford to retire. Naturally, we all find that out, don't we? So I was on the internet, finding jobs. I thought, I think I can work overseas. And so I filled out all this. I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. And then I thought I was applying for a job in Australia. When it popped up, it was in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia. And I thought, maybe not, maybe not. So I called my sister, and I said, what should I do? She goes, push the button, push the button. So I went, okay. They called me the next day, flew me to Houston. I think they kind of do this in the corporate world a little bit more, but in nursing, we're not used to people flying us anyplace. Flew me to Houston, put me up at the DoubleTree, wooed me, took me out to dinner, did an orientation, and I was bought. I was like on that plane. So unfortunately, I almost didn't get off. Lands in the old El Khobar airport, and big, 747, and lands at the airport, and you don't have the gangway. You have the big steps that go down into this airport, and there's a rounding the airport. All the guys in their thobe and gutras, the white things that they wear, thobes, and the headscarf, the checkered tablecloth they wear in Saudi is a gutra. The little black rings are an igal. And so I almost didn't get off. I was like, at the door. I'm not doing it. It really was tough for the first year or so because I had never been outside the U.S. So it was very interesting to go over there and take part of a whole nother culture. So that's kind of how I got there. I was working for Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco is the world's largest oil company. I did bring some things with me just to kind of show you a couple of things we have. And This interesting little rock right here, I actually got one from one of my rigger friends, the guys who work on the rigs, called rigger guys. This is actually a core sample that they bring up from in the oil derricks. When they come up, this was one of the core samples. And they have obviously lots of them. But I thought it was kind of interesting enough that it ended up coming home with me. So that's my little core sample. So I work for Saudi Aramco. You live on a base, much like a U.S. Army bases, and you can drive there. Otherwise, women can't drive in the kingdom. You don't have to wear the abaya and the hijab when you're on the camp. It's a very American. We had swimming pools and bowling alleys. It's Army base. If you know what an Army base is like, just think that. You know, we had movie theaters. As soon as you walked outside the gate, you were in Saudi Arabia. And everything that Saudi Arabia brought to the table. I heard a thing. Saudi Arabia is a young society with an ancient history. And that's pretty much true, because Saudi Arabia didn't really come into being until 1938 when oil was discovered. Before that, it was just a Bedouin society. And so that's pretty much, so they're kind of like struggling to go from the back on a camel to the pickup truck, just like that. And when I first arrived in Saudi Arabia in 1999, that was pretty obvious. You know, they were struggling very much. When I first got there, though, internet had just started. Stop and think back to 99. Cell phones still weren't around, even in the US, so much. Satellite TV was banned in the kingdom. So I dropped into a place that was unbelievable trip back in time. It was an amazing place, an amazing experience. Fortunately, or unfortunately, however you look at it, internet came along. Cell phones, satellite TV, they ain't hiding nothing from them people anymore. They want to know everything. And is that not what's going on in the world right now? They're not hiding anything. And so we started seeing that change. When I first got there, I started teaching. I did go over to teach nursing. We were teaching Saudi women. I was attached to a unit called Saudiization, and the whole point was to bring women into the workforce. In Saudi Arabia, 58% at the time, 58% of all college graduates were women. They were less than 2% of the workforce. So that, you know, now people say, well, how come they got to go to college and the men didn't? You have to kind of understand statistics and how you can skew things. It's because all the men got to go overseas. If you were anybody who was everybody, went overseas to go to school. So that's why so many of them stayed in the college. Got there. So we took us over there to start nursing. Not a big success. They have a fine medical system. The nurses are all imported. The last hospital I worked at, I went back and I worked for the Ministry of Health at King Fahd Specialist Hospital as Mustashfa Malik Fahad. And we had nurses from over 36 different countries. Majority come from the Philippines and India, and that's how they get their workforce. And we were successful. While I was there, we graduated our first girls with a master's degree in obstetrics, in obstetrical nursing. So 4 people were in our class. So it's starting. It's just kind of, they're far behind us. So this is hijab. And the women in Saudi Arabia are required to cover their hair. And all Saudi women do. The expatriates, of which I am one, depending on where you were at, in the Eastern Province, everybody has to wear the abaya. All women had to wear black and wear the abaya. As soon as you're outside of camp, wherever you're at, you have to wear the abaya. But the head covering in the Eastern Province was kind of lax. I mean, you would get in trouble. I mean, I would go to the mall, and if the Matawa, who are the religious police, they're for the prevention of vice and the promotion of virtue, the Matawa. They would come up to you and start yelling at you because you didn't have your hair covered or something. But like in Jeddah or Riyadh, you didn't go out of the house without your cover. So we wore this then. But what I didn't, the actual hijab is this. And I happen to have one, but I have to be honest about it, I never wore it. In fact, you can kind of tell, I just kind of picked this one up. But for the most part, the women in Saudi do. It's not required to cover your face in Saudi Arabia for the Saudi women like it is like the burqa and that in Afghanistan. The women don't have to wear it. Mostly it's a Shia Sunni thing, depending on what your background, Shia or Sunni. The Sunni women, for the most part, did not, but the Shia women did. And so they would cover from head to toe and keep their faces covered. So I just wanted to share that with you. What else I have up here, I thought we might get on to talk about a prayer schedule. Our whole lives evolved around a prayer call. 5 times a day, the world stops. Everything stops. Stores close. So we used to carry our prayer, when we wanted to go downtown shopping or anything, we'd always try to get our drivers to take us down there and get between prayer calls, or to be in some place between a prayer call. And just in case you didn't know about prayer calls, I did bring my little handy dandy prayer call clock, one of the little really catchy things that I brought. Five times a day, you get to hear the prayer call. And it's very loud. This is very soft. It was very loud because he'll go on for 20 minutes, really, he will. But the speakers are very loud and all over the place. So what else do I have? I thought Vinjagawa, cups of coffee. You don't go anyplace. They still use this coffee pot. This is still very much usable. And they fill these up with their coffee, which has got cardamom in it. It's a very bitter coffee. And you get your little cups and you drink your coffee. And then when you're finished, you swirl and then you turn your cup upside down to indicate that you don't want any more. And it always has dates. I never had a date until I left the United States and got over there. Dates is like the national food. And oh my God, are they good. And we go out and pick them off trees. The big things are baskets, the Bedouin baskets. I love them, love them, love them. These have the camel skin bottoms. And so I have a couple of these. These are getting to be very rare over there. So I think they're beautiful. So that's why I have a couple of these that I just kind of sit around. I don't have any really big ones. This is actually, I don't know what this is. Well, I found it at a little shop up in Hafuf. I was up in the Hafuf fair, and they tell me it's hand carved, and that the women used to keep they would keep their frankincense and myrrh and stuff in here. I have no idea how old it is, but I don't think it's one of my touristy things. I don't think it's like the clock that they sell. I think I actually got a real find here. I just have some rocks in it. But you can take a look at that. And then two desert flowers. These are formed in the desert from the sands. I have a couple of those. Some of them are big and beautiful. They're illegal to take out of the kingdom, so you don't actually see those. But some of them are really big, and they'll come and they use them as doorstops and things. They're so big. And the last thing has nothing to do with Saudi Arabia, but I love it. It's my walking along the Dead Sea. I picked this up. There's like all along the Dead Sea. It's all like you pick up sand. This is all this big salt, all these big salt deposits along the Dead Sea. And a cookbook. I thought some of us ladies, it's kind of fallen apart, but I think it's been around for a very long time. But it's got a lot of the traditional dishes and that in it. I have several of those. And then this is the touristy thing. Not that they have tourists over there. So it's just a door lock. And the tail is actually your lock. So it's kind of cute. I think I could work it maybe. Okay, that's me in a nutshell. What do we want to talk? Want to talk about women's issues? I can get on that. I'm telling you. Yes, ma'am.
I think I've heard Linda speak before, and I think it was really interesting when I've heard you talk about some of the women's issues and socialization and the things when you were training them to be nurses. Some of the issues of what you had to work with women because they're so unsocialized.
It's so interesting. One of the things that I think I knew, and I think that we knew when we started the Saudiization unit, that there's a complete separation in the sexes. The genders do not meet. They do not eat in the same rooms. I went to my students' houses, big, beautiful houses, and they take you to the ladies' parlor, and the men sit somewhere else. When you're out in public, you go to McDonald's, they literally have drapes around every single booth at McDonald's when you go in. And other places will have a women's section where only women can go. So they can't, because they can't show their face and they can't be with men. Even when, as a society, once I was off base, I was not allowed to walk around by myself. I couldn't walk from my house to the store, which the first time I was over there, I told you I lived on Saudi Aramco in Dhahran, on their base. It was 15,000 people. We had 3 schools there because it was as an expatriate community. So it wasn't so much that my friends were Saudis as they were from all over the world. You know, my best friends were English and Australian and Canadian and Jordanian and from Amsterdam. And it was, you know, we used to take turns eating at each other's houses. We all had specialties. Mine was Southern fried chicken, mashed taters, and gravy, biscuits. Mike always cooked the Yorkshire pudding and roast beef for us on Sundays. You know, oh, Susan though with her lamb. That's how I learned to love lamb. We don't eat lamb. Well, I tell you what, let Susan make it. She's Australian. You really get into it. But anyway, the second time I went over there, I came back home in 2006. They kind of were starting to really bomb things bad. The terrorists was getting really heavy. I was living, by then I'd been transferred up to the desert. I was living in a place called Abqaiq, and it's a big switching station. All the oil in Saudi Arabia goes into one spot and gets disseminated out, whether it's going to the oil, you know, back out to the big tankers or to, you know, to other countries. And the terrorists decided the best way to shut Saudi Aramco down, who was friendly with the U.S., was to get rid of the switching station. So they used to fill big trucks up with, you know, bombs and fertilizer and everything and drive them through the gates and try to blow the place up. And I decided maybe I wanted to come home. So I did come home. I was home for 2 years, and I got invited back to the King Fahd Specialist Hospital, which is not on a base. It was working for the Ministry of Health. So I worked for the Ministry of Health, and I lived in an apartment building in downtown Dammam. Amazing place, amazing society. So the first time I was over there, I got used to people from all over the world. The second time I was over there, I got used to the people, the natives. I learned Arabic. I got enmeshed in the culture. My friends were Jordanian and Lebanese, so it really became very Middle Eastern. But it's still a very clustered society. To get back to where Dina was going with this question, the segregation is rampant throughout the Middle East. You do not talk to each other. You do not see each other. You do not walk alone the street. You do not get a single woman doesn't get in a car. A women's issue. I actually knew of cases where one man wanted to get rid of his wife, so he arranged with his friend to go. He was leaving the house, arranged with his friend to go to the house, knock on the door, and tell his wife that he wanted to wait. So the guy goes to the house, knocks on the door, and says, oh, I want to see Jerry. Of course, his name wasn't Jerry, it was probably Muhammad, because they're all named Muhammad. But Muhammad, I'm here to see Muhammad. Muhammad's not here, you can't come in. And he's like, oh, no, he told me he'd be here 1 minute. I can. So she let him come into the house, put him in the parlor, and sure enough, 10 minutes later, guess who shows up? Matawa. Guess where she was at when I knew her? She's in jail, because she was found in a house with a man that was not her husband. Yeah. Scary, still goes on. I had one of my students got pregnant by her driver, you know, young girls. They will do these things. Her mother married her off as the 4th wife. 2, 3, 4 wives are very common in the kingdom. It's not something you just hear about and think doesn't really exist. Everybody has, all the men. My director of nursing, Dr. Y.L. Azair, got married to his 2nd wife while I was there. But married her off to an old man as his 4th wife. And my friend was like, oh, it's so horrible. I feel so sorry for Maha. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Her brothers were obligated to kill her, so, you know, I'm okay with her being married off to the old man, because she would have been killed. And don't doubt that she wouldn't have been. They didn't tolerate it. So when we come into this society, we knew all these things. But what we didn't know was that there's not socialization among women. Stop and think about it. Where do you go to meet the women you know? You go to church? Guess what? Women in Saudi Arabia don't go to mosque. They pray at home. The mosque are only for men. Now, if you go to Egypt and some of those different places, the back half is for women, but not in Saudi Arabia. That's only for men. By the time I left, there were some shopping centers, but there weren't big shopping centers. You can't go shopping. You know, you send everybody, the men, you give your list and things to men. Women don't go out shopping. So, You don't really have, all your schools are segregated, and so they don't even really get to know other women. And so this is why we speculated that they tell us they like to have the third and the fourth wife show up, because you know what? It's a friend. They don't have any friends outside of their family. So when hubby brings home a new wife, they got a new girlfriend. So it works out great. Everybody's happy. But they don't have any, our students wouldn't talk to each other. They had never met these women before. They weren't part of their family. So to even get them to even talk with a colleague was amazing. So we used to sit around and we would have times when we would do something. The only thing our whole class is that they had to sit knee to knee and just touch each other on the leg. Just to start feeling touch from another human being that you didn't know. Because they were never going to be nurses if they couldn't even take care of someone else. By the way, it was not a success. Our program did fail. It was partially, there were many cultural reasons. You know, it doesn't run a hospital well when at 3 o'clock in the morning the student leaves, or she's actually now, you know, she's working on one of the units, and she has to leave because daddy called up and told her to come home. You know, the men do run everything in the kingdom. It's very much it's a very male-dominated society. So those are some real women's issues, and I think one of the things that I think disheartened me the most, but makes me so very proud to be an American, if you stop and think about it, a handful of men fought for our country. They banded together, and despite everything else, for some reason they fought for this place. And then, for women to get to the vote and everything else, that was another handful of women who fought for each other. They were fighting for people they didn't even know. In the kingdom, I was talking to a couple before we started, and I was telling them the story about when I landed in that plane I talked about. There was one little Saudi girl there, beautiful girl, sitting there just really chatting up one of the stewardess or steward guys, the cabin attendant. As soon as we get into Saudi Arabia airspace and we're getting ready to land, out comes all the regalia and goes on, wraps up. She gets off that plane and she looks like the most matronly woman. And I guess that my thought at the time was, if this is your belief, why don't you believe it all the time? Why is it just when you're in the kingdom? You know, there's been a lot of stuff in the issue lately about driving, women wanting to drive in the kingdom. Huge issue. The women love to live on now with less and less expatriates, and more the country shifting to Saudization and more using the Saudis to do the work. They're wanting to live on this 15,000 people camp that I lived in. They love to live there. The women love to live there because they can drive. They drive. Have you ever? It's a very frightening thought. You got the whole hijab on and everything, and you're driving. You have to wonder what they're looking at. You know how much they can see. You kind of steer clear of them, But is that not kind of ironic? They want to drive, and so they get to do that on camp. But if you're rich enough, you get to drive when you're out of the country. One of the big pushes they had right before I left was, well, you won't give us. They would say that you couldn't drive without a license, and that's why they were arresting the women. It wasn't that they were driving; it was because they didn't have a license. So the women started saying, "I got one. I got one from Britain. I got one from the U.S. I got a license to drive." And so, because they recognized men's foreign license. You know, so then there was a big kick up in the kingdom. And guess what they did shortly thereafter? All men had to go get Saudi license. So it's always interesting how kind of things go through the back door, you know, how things happen. So, but I think when you look at it from a perspective of how and why our country was great and continues to be great, it's because there's always a handful of people willing to step to the plate and fight the battle. Over there, you know, I got to drive, so I don't care about you, sister. You know, I get to lead the kingdom. Like, I can't stand it here in the kingdom. I can't stand the oppression. I'm leaving. I go out of town. I go out of the kingdom 6 months every year. You know, that kind of an attitude, but nobody bands together. I had a student, I tell you, when you talk about women's issues, her mother was an American. She showed me a picture of her mother from 1970. Could have been me. You know, long straight hair, split down the middle, you know. Looked like me. She had 12 children. 6 of them were girls with a Saudi man. And this girl didn't want anything but to get out of Saudi Arabia. And she asked me to help her. She came to me and said, you know, I have to leave. I can't stand it here anymore. You know, my father's going to make me marry so-and-so, and I got to leave. And I did not help her. I don't know. Didn't help her. Could not help her. You know, I took the company line and didn't tell anybody, but I wished her the best of luck. Interesting thing. So that's kind of some of the women's issues. And I can always talk about that, but always living in the background it's made me really study how societies evolve, how when I got in 1999, it was still very much a male-dominated society, and by the time I finally left in 2011 for the final time, they had malls, big malls. Women, they had taken the young girls have taken these abayas, and they started adding all this nice little black stuff and things. And now you'll see them, they'll have a big peacock, colorful peacock on the back, and they've kind of cut them in now. They made them a little A-line, and they wear their black high heels, and they're a little bit shorter now. And I'm telling you, they're not missing anything. They want roses for Valentine's Day, but they have to get them from us expatriates. I mean, I had men come up to me, hey, Bo. Oh, they always call me Bo. I'm sorry. I'm not Linda. I was Bo over there. Bo, can you get some flowers for me? My wife wants roses. I want to get her roses for Valentine's Day. Well, you can't, as an Arab man, go buy roses because the matawa would be on top of you. You know, so they know what you were wanting for. So they would send us out to get them when we go. We knew what florist we could go to, and at the counter say, I said, I'm an American woman, I need some roses, and they'd sell them to me. So, you know, all these ways. The kids love Halloween. When you're over there now, the last time I was over there in 2011, the kids at Halloween time, they have Halloween parties for the kids. You know, I mean, the Matawa are just going crazy over there. You know, women are wanting roses for this Saints' Day, and kids are dressing up in costumes, because costumes don't go. You know, you don't dress in anything but your native dress, even the kids. You know, they're very, very not accepted. So that's the direction this talk has taken. I haven't let you all say a word, so I will. Yes, sir. 9/11 hit. Interesting question. I was telling somebody just a little bit ago that I had just gotten on a plane. I was coming home. I was bringing a lot of this kind of stuff home to show people. And I brought little clocks, and I brought my son the gutra and everything. By the time I landed in the United States, I think I probably would have been better off to burn them, because I actually flew in about 2 hours before 9/11. Yeah. I did spend an interesting, you talk about your life, if anybody told me in 1999 that I would be spending the millennium drinking hooch in the back in Saudi Arabia, we used to make our own, alcohol is forbidden in the kingdom of any way, shape, or form. I was quite a little beer maker, I'm gonna let you know. I had friends who made wine. I was never very good at the wine. I actually had some very good batches of wine, but I was never consistent about it. And I gave up on the white wine altogether because, it just stayed cloudy. But I had friends who had the stills, and I used to be a still watcher. If I wanted to get my share of Sid was our local hooch. It's Siddiq, means friend in Arabic. So we used to all drink Sid. And so if I wanted to get mine, I had to watch the still, because it has to stay at a certain temperature. And I had to know what to do if it went off between those little lines. So that's how I did. But I sat there and welcomed in the millennium with some really bad, because apparently with the stills, you have to run it through so many times. The more times you run it through, the more palatable it gets and the less liver damage it causes. So when you buy it off the local market, you don't know how many times they ran it through. And it takes like 1 or 2 times, and I don't know what you're doing to your liver. I must have been stupid and crazy. And you have to cut it. All of White Lightning has to be cut, usually about 5 to 1. So you take we used to have them in the liter soda bottles, and so we would cut them, but you'd buy it in the liter soda bottles, and it looks just like water in the water bottles. And so I can remember one time I had some sitting on the counter, and so I was thirsty, so I went by and picked it up and went, uncut Sid. I thought I drank lye. I was literally dying. All I could think of is I'm going to have to go to the ER and admit to them that I have Sid in my house, that I drank it, and they're going to put me on a plane and send me home. And they would have. Take my word for it. They would have. So, I'm a nurse, right? Then drink. You just get plain water by that time, just to get it to wash down. The background, the underground pubs, what a fun lifestyle. Let me just say Prohibition was lively and lasted for a reason, because the only thing that's better than a beer is an illegal beer. Let me just tell you. Yes, ma'am.
I was curious, the women that wear burqas, were they allowed to drive on the American Post, or,
The women who wear burqas. Yeah, you keep it.
you can't see, I mean, the
Right.
visibility.
Are they allowed to drive on the American quarters? First of all, they're not burqas, we're abayas. Burqas are, and that's something that people don't understand. Each one of the Middle Eastern countries, what the women wear has got a different name. It's abaya in Saudi Arabia, burqa in Afghanistan. And yes, my answer is yes. That's why it was very scary. Yeah, what can they see?
How are the little girls dressed?
Up until about the age of 9, when they become women, when they get their first period, they are allowed to, you wouldn't know them from boys or girls in the States. They look exactly like that. But you start seeing girls in their abayas about the age of 9. And you also see them promised to somebody about the age of 9. A lot of promised marriages. All marriages in the kingdom are arranged. I didn't have a problem with that. They have a 50% fail rate. Well, guess what? So do we. So who cares? But there's a lot of first cousin marriages in the kingdom, and not a lot of first cousin marriages in the kingdom. It is the norm is to marry your first cousin. So, one of the things that being in medicine, I soon realized after I was there, there's a whole secret society about the genetics. And I always think of a geneticist, if he really wants to study genetics and understand how things work, Saudi Arabia is a prime place to go. And they know that, but they just can't get in. But, when you have first cousins who marry first cousins who marry first cousins. I had a friend, we always made stupid mistakes. I was sharing a story over there, everything was so foreign to me. I mean, I was telling them we were trying to arrange for a lab. We're talking about Canadians, and I said, yeah, some of my really good friends were Canadians. I was trying to arrange a lab experience for my students, and my friend, Sheila, told me to talk to Guy Boulanger. He's the head of lab. So I go bopping down to lab. I can't find any Guy Boulanger. So I come back up to my office, and I'm like, Sheila, where's this guy's number? And she says, it's right there on your desk. I said, no, there's only this guy Bollinger's number. So I was so stupid, I didn't even know Guy Boulanger was Guy Bollinger, is how they say. So I was like, but everything was so foreign to me. Yes, sir.
My question is very short, but I want to tell you why I ask it. I want to ask whether the society or the culture is overtly anti-Israel, but the reason I ask that is because we don't hear it publicized very much, but we hear that Saudi Arabia in particular would publicly condemn Israel for taking on Iran if they do, but they would secretly be applauding it.
You know what? You get into a lecture within a lecture of itself. Wanting to know how do the Saudis really feel about Israel? The Saudis really feel about you really need to understand the Sunni and the Shia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is 80% Sunni and 20% Shia. Like Bahrain was across the causeway where we used to go do all of our fun games and drinking and things, was across the causeway, is just the opposite. It's 80% Shia and 20% Sunni. The Kingdom of Yemen, Syria, those are all Shia strongholds. And the only thing that a Sunni Muslim hates worse than a non-believer than us is a Shia. And to be honest about it, I figured out in my own little mind that the whole Middle East is a war between the Shia and the Sunni. We just make ourselves an easy target. You know what? It goes back to and I used to know this history, so I can't relate it well now, but to when the tribes split up. Tribal loyalties in the kingdom are the norm. I didn't understand. I'm an American. I'm a stupid American. I grew up in St. Louis. When you talk tribes, I'm thinking Red Indians, and it was something that happened back in the, Indian days, and we all loved it. Tribal loyalties in the kingdom drive who you talk to, who you marry. And my secretaries, when I worked at the last place I worked, I had 2 secretaries that were both Saudi. Both of them were Shia, which was good because one day they come in, one day one of the instructors got in a fight with another one, and they were like, oh, you got to go pull them apart. I'm like, oh, there's a lot of trouble in the kingdom you don't know about between the Shia and Sunni. And they wanted me to go pull them apart, and I was like, nah, I'm not getting in the middle of this. But it is huge, the difference, the loyalties, the tribal basis. And when, if you think back to your Bible even, And I really have to refresh my memory exactly when you talk about how Ishmael and Israel and how they split off into the different tribes. The ones that stayed in the kingdom became the Bedouins was from, what was Joseph's son?
Sons of Abraham.
Yeah, sons of Abraham. Esau, wasn't it? No, Joseph was, see how bad I am? I actually know this, but Ishmael, that's right. When they split off, the one stayed behind to be the Bedouins, and the other one, went into Egypt, right? Is that, now have I got it right? Sort of? Right. And so getting back to how they feel about the Israels, I'm going to say anything is okay if you're taking care of the Shia, they're okay with that. But then again, when we talk about, are we talking about governments or are we talking about common people? Because once again, governments are one thing, but getting to know someone getting to know my Jordanian friends and my, the Saudis that I knew and everything on a daily basis, the normal everyday people want pretty much what we want. They just want to live. They want to go to work. They want to raise their kids. They want to have fun. They don't want all that stuff that sits in the background no more than we do. It's that handful of people. And I'm really running out of time here, I know. So, yes, ma'am. She asked if they're with the arranged marriages and is there a lot of deformity in the children. And that goes back to me in my polite way of saying it's a genetic gold mine. The genetic deformities and if you think about any kind of genetic disease, from as simple as the sixth finger, that's not that uncommon in the U.S. even for somebody to be born with another finger. We usually cut it off, or you do see that every once in a while. That becomes a norm in some families, So same, an extra leg or something, it's actually very sad. It's not anything I wanted to be privy to.
Did you observe the 5 daily prayer time, and how did you do that?
Did I? Yeah, I observed them. Pushing and screaming, yelling and screaming, I observed them. I observed them because I didn't have any choice, because I wasn't allowed to do anything. All the shops closed. That's why I have a prayer schedule. Our lives planned to run a prayer schedule. We used to carry these around with us. Our whole goal was to get downtown before, right this month, Isra is at 3:53. So you wanted to leave where you were going. You wanted to leave right before 3:53. Get down to where you wanted to go at 3:53. Or that's when you left, so that you got down. It's about a 15-minute prayer. So you would time yourself to be downtown about 4:15. You could shop for 2 hours, and then Migrum started, and so you had to be back in town. We did have a handful. We as expatriates, we kind of knew who would allow us to come sit in their shop while the shops were closed. And then every once in a while they decide that they're not going. They come in and kick us all out. And one of my scariest times was hiding out at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, one of the most popular places in El Cobar, KFC's, because the curtains and the Matawa coming through, and it's a whole nother story. We ran in there trying to get away from some boys, me and Sheila, stupidity. Shopping centers are what shopping centers are, and they do have the strip malls, and friends of ours had dropped us off at the street, and we wanted to go up to the strip mall. We were going to go up there shopping, but before we could get up there, we were accosted by a bunch of Saudi young men. And so we ran to the stores and started pounding on the doors to let us in. Nobody would let us in except the Kentucky Fried Chicken. They let us come in, but then apparently some Matawa had seen it happen or something, so they came in to, I guess it wasn't us that they would get in trouble. We're American women. They left us alone, but they would have arrested the gentlemen that were there. And so we hid in the Kentucky Fried Chicken so they couldn't find us. And since they couldn't find us, the people were swearing it all turned out okay, but those become norms in your life. That's why when I was in Africa one time, and it was at the elections, and we were in Nairobi, and everybody was saying we had to get out of town because the people who won the elections wasn't the right people, so there were all these big riots and everything. And so they told us everybody had to leave. So all my friends and everything they were getting on planes, paying $1,000 to get out the day before the election results came in. And I remember my friend Kathy and we looked at each other and went, "We live in Saudi Arabia. We ain't going no place." And we didn't. We stayed. We were like, "There gonna be riots in the street. We're gonna watch." So you get very used to war. Let me just say that. Here, yes, ma'am.
You said you were over there to teach nursing to
Yes.
women.
Okay, did the women actually get to use their nursing, and where did they use it at?
You know, yeah, that's a big, long answer, too, because our program was not a success. The universities are now putting out a moderate amount of women at higher level degrees and that, and they're pretty much following the same pathway as the men. They go into management. So as a Western woman or as a person from Philippines or India or everything, your director of nursing is probably going to be a Saudi and probably got her bachelor's degree and went right into right into being the director of nursing because she's Saudi. Now my director of nursing.
Nurse then? I mean, did they use nurses?
Nurses are all imported. 36 different countries is where at King Fahad. All of our nurses came from 36 different countries. All the women are Filipino or Indian or, some men, but it's okay for a foreign woman to touch a man. But even it's just interesting. I mean, I can go on about when, do you see a woman drop down and die? You don't go be doing no CPR. You let her die. Really hard for me to get, I was an ER nurse. Very hard for me to get used to that. And then when you had a woman died in the hospital or was getting close to death, you didn't in the U.S. You just wow, I was an ER nurse. Our favorite tool was our scissors. That's what we did more than anything else. No, you turned their feet towards Mecca. And that's marked on all the walls, by the way. The direction of Mecca is everywhere. It's marked on every wall. I can't remember the name now, but we used to have to go in and look for the Mecca sign. Yes, ma'am.
If you had a patient that you were working with and it came time for prayers, what was the procedure? Did you just leave them and?
Yeah, it depends. When you're sick, you always take a whole lot of, you can forgive things. And also, there's different levels of how much I believe, so it depends on the situation. Certainly during Ramadan was a huge, huge problem because, they don't eat from sunup to sunset. During Ramadan, they don't eat or drink. We're not allowed to eat or drink either, by the way. In other Arab countries, you are, but in Saudi Arabia, you not either. I could not, I had to get rid of my coffee pot, my cup of water, everything came off my desk during Ramadan, which was okay when Ramadan was in December. Ramadan is in August now. You got 16 hours of daylight, and they do not eat or drink. That's not very healthy.
No.
So, we try to feed the women, try to teach them. And what they do is the women, during their periods and things, they can pay that time back. So they were always paying time back. I'd say something to my secretary, and she'd say, "Oh, I'm fasting, I'm paying back." They would pay that time back all year if they couldn't fast during Ramadan. But it did create a higher number of mortality rate goes up during Ramadan. It certainly does. Especially diabetes is 50% in the kingdom because, they have every fast food place you ever wanted to see. Kentucky Fried Chicken's their favorite place to go. They have McDonald's, they have Burger Kings, they have everything. Love them to death. They have a greater than, last numbers I heard were reaching 60% of the kingdom has diabetes. Huge problems that us Westerners have created. Of course, it doesn't help that they won't give up their dates. I can tell you why dates are so good. I wish I could, they're delicious, but those kingdom dates, those are some good things. I'm going to have to quit here, I know. So thank you all. I love to just talk about my experience. I love to talk about myself, quite obviously. So anytime, just let me come on back and I will continue with this talk. Thank you.
Thank you.